happy Sunday, and welcome to Connections. I'm your host, Ed Clark. It is Sunday, February 5th, 2023, and we're so happy you're in with us. And my co-host, Sherelle James. Sherelle, welcome back to Connections.
Hey, I'm so happy to be here.
Well, Sherelle, there's so much going on in the world. I don't want to waste any time. We got a very exciting guest lined up as well. But what I want to talk to you about first, and I know it's been on everybody's mind this week, what happened in Memphis. I don't know what to say. I can tell you when the video was released, Sherelle, I teared up a little bit. And then when I saw Tyreek's parents, I'm a parent. I have a young black son who's 21 years old. My other son is 40, and I'm a senior citizen, but I'm still a black man who drives. And I have to tell you that I have trepidation a lot when I go out driving, depending on where I am.
Yeah.
So let's talk real quick. And put this to bed, but talk to me about your visceral emotions around what you saw when you saw the video and then heard about what happened.
So let me just be honest with you. I did not see the video on purpose. Let me just be very clear about that. I am at a point in my life that every other week there's a video coming out and it's just a blatant disrespect for life, period, human life, and then African-American life, right? And so with all the fibers of my being, I could not even go and entertain to find the video, to look for the video, to watch the video. It was just one of those things of, I am tired. I think that there is something else. Now, I don't know. This is just me talking now, Ed, here. This is not official. So let me just be very clear about that, because I want nobody to run with this and say, she said. But I believe that there's different parameters around maybe why it happened. I just feel like it may be something personal or maybe something that happened. But there was something other than just a traffic stop. Being that was all 5 Black officers and a Black male involved, is just, you usually don't get, that without there being something personal for the most part. But what I will say is, regardless of what the parameters were for or reasoning for the excessive force that happened, it was excessive force. And it was a excessive use of power by police officers who were there to serve and protect and be. And that, to me, I have zero tolerance for that. As a former law enforcement officer, I have a zero tolerance for that, because I know, what we go through and why we're there. And we're supposed to be there to protect, right, the community, and to be there. Now, definitely keep people safe and check things out. But to just use that authority that you have in any realm, I don't care what that realm is just, that's not good integrity. That's not good character for me. And so I didn't look at the video, but I didn't need to look at the video to know what happened, because we've seen so many videos. And the laugh that you hear is not, taking it lightly. It's because sometimes to stop from crying, you have to laugh a little bit, because it hurts so bad, especially with our young men. I don't have any kids personally, but I did raise my brother, who is 33. I have a sister who's kind of like our daughter, and she's 35. And I cringe, even with my husband walking out the door. I cringe, and an upstanding citizen, right? I cringe every time he walks out the door until he walks back in.
Yeah, I hear you, Sherelle. That's Sherelle James. She's the co-host, and you're listening to Connections on Foxy 107, 104. It's Sunday, February 5th, and we're talking about Tyre Nichols, who was murdered in Memphis. I mean, I don't know how else to say it, Sherelle. I get, I hear what you're saying about, just how evil and depraved it was, and it had to be something else to it. And there likely is. However, I did think about this. You were in law enforcement, right? And that was one of the reasons why I wanted to start out with this. I always hear this thing that, there's some good cops and there's some bad cops, right? Right. I hear that all the time. My brother was in law enforcement for years. He retired from law enforcement, the Harnett County Sheriff's Department. And I would hear him say that there's some good cops, there's some bad cops, whatever. I want to get to this notion of how we just police, period. Right?
Mm-hmm.
I have this problem with policing being militarized.
Mm-hmm.
It's like we live in this crazy foreign country that requires us to over police, because there's countries in the world where the police don't have any weapons. There's places in the world where the citizens don't have any weapons, and they're certainly safer than we are. Mm-hmm. Talk to me real quick about policing from your experience.
Sure.
And why, and here's the loaded question. Why did you get out of police?
Okay. That is a loaded question. It's a good question though. So I was a law enforcement officer. So I was a certified peace officer like police officers. I was not a police officer. I was actually a parole officer in the state of Georgia. But I did go out with police officers, DEA, ATF, U.S. Marshals, because a lot of times there weren't a lot of women when I was in, right? And so whenever they were looking for a woman or they were doing stops and things of that nature, I always went with them to kind of be that woman officer for a lot of the women that they were going after or stopping and things of that nature, or just to help out as a fellow law enforcement officer, is what I did. Now, when we talk about over policing, and I'll address last why I got out, but when we talk about over policing, I think it's one of those things of we've made the police everything, right? So if it's a mental health issue, we send the police. If it's a spat, we send the police. We send the police for every single thing. And one of the things that Mecklenburg County had started doing was sending out, and Raleigh, the chief in Raleigh is doing a little bit have a pilot program that's happening with this as well. When I spoke with her, where they're sending a social worker out with the police so that, police are taught, you're trained for what you're trained for, right? To serve and protect. And so whether it's a violent situation, to respond in those ways. And there pretty much is very much military training in a lot of instances and ways of training. I did go to BLET, basic law enforcement training. So all of that, it does happen. But because you're in that mindset or mode of responding, sometimes everybody's not the social worker. Everybody doesn't understand other things that may be happening, right, at a scene. And so I commend the chief of Raleigh and Mecklenburg County for kind of starting an initiative with the pilot programs of putting social workers with police officers. So Mecklenburg is, if there's a child involved, they send a counselor out with the police department. It doesn't matter if the child committed the crime or is a part of the crime anyway, whatever it is, they send a counselor out. And they're doing something similar, not exactly that, but similar, where social workers riding around with the police department here in Raleigh. And it changes things, right? It changes perspectives. It helps police officers understand and see things in a different way. I remember, and the last thing I'll say is I remember in emergency management, another one of my jobs, emergency management, that we talked about when police officers go out to people with disabilities. So say that you are mute. When you handcuff my hands, you have now taken my voice. So there's a lot of different things that we need to look at. But I think one of the things that we don't talk about locally or across the U.S. is every police department isn't trained or staffed to train the same way. The money doesn't come in the same way for every police department. So you get a hodgepodge across the U.S. and even across the different counties in North Carolina, being if you're in a rural area, urban area, suburban area, and what type of money and funds that are there. I came out because I had a young gentleman by the name of Derek James that said, "Hey, I want to marry you." And he was living in North Carolina and I was living in Georgia. And so he had the better job. He's making about 3 times as much as I was. So when we looked at, okay, where do we live and what do we do? I ended up leaving, and I was going to continue my job in North Carolina, but and got accepted, but decided not to, just because I think I started thinking about my life a little bit more. I started looking at having a family, where before it was just me, and I didn't have, I wasn't as worried about that. And so just a different mindset in getting married.
Yeah, I hear you. You know what? So that last piece, you said something that you probably didn't even realize. He made more money than you. And one of the issues in law enforcement, they don't make a whole lot of money. And so consequently, you have people going into law enforcement that probably aren't the cream of the crop, right? Because you make a decision a lot of times about what career you want to do based on how much money you can make. And frankly, you don't make a lot in law enforcement in a lot of communities. So I'm going to put a pin in that, because I'm going to challenge you to this, Sherelle. We need to get the police chief from Durham and Raleigh and Chapel Hill and all the surrounding areas on the program. I know, and we need to get Roger Floyd on here, George Floyd's uncle, who's a friend of mine, and he's been on the program before. Because I want to talk to him about his reaction to some of these things going on. There was a police involved death here in Raleigh that I want to talk about at some point. So we're going to target that for the next time we're on, to get some people on a larger panel to talk about that. But in the meantime, I'm going to switch gears drastically because I don't want to run out of time in this segment. There was a lady in town this week who happens to live in D.C., graduated from Howard. What's her name? She was vice president or something?
Miss Harris. Vice President Kamala Harris was here in the house. HBCU grad.
Yeah, so talk to me about why she was here, and then how our guest plays into why she was here.
Absolutely. So she was here on Wednesday, and she came in to talk about the Biden-Harris administration and their support for small businesses, right? And as we look at starting February, which is Black History Month, and looking at achievements in Black history, definitely we have to look at business, right? And business achievements, especially in the climate that we have today. We just got finished talking about some of the things that we have to deal with on a day-to-day basis. And Kamala came in to talk about the full support that they had, and talk about kind of how much money they've been putting out, and what's been happening, and how they're making sure that small business is supported, which we definitely need more of. And the topic of the day was access to capital. So as we talk about that, you definitely look at small businesses and say, hey, what's happening with them, what's going on? And we have none other than Gail Jennings with us today with King's Peppers. And she's got a tremendous, wonderful, glorious, how many words can I find, story, as well as we kick off Black History Month. Her seasonings come from West Africa recipes. And so I'm excited to have her.
Well, you know what? I'm not going to shortchange her. So we're going to do her formal introduction when we come back from a break. I need everybody to stay there. You're listening to Connections with Ed Clark and Sherelle James. And we got a very special guest who makes some really good spices that you need to get a hold of. So stay right there. We'll be right back after this message.
Too many women die every year due to pregnancy-related complications. 2/3 of these deaths are preventable. As healthcare professionals, we play a critical role in making sure women's health concerns are addressed during and after pregnancy. Help your patients understand the warning signs and when they should seek care. Actively listen when she raises concerns. It could save her life. Hear her.
Mr. Chairman, and to the Credentials Committee, my name is Mrs. Fannie Lou Hamer, and I live at 626 East Lafayette Street, Rooseville, Mississippi. Sunflower County, the home of Senator James O. Eastland and Senator Stinnett. If the Freedom Democratic Party is not seated now, I question America. Is this America, the land of the free and the home of the brave, where we have to sleep with our telephones off of the hook because our lives be threatened daily, because we want to live as decent human beings in America?
And welcome back to our second segment of Connections. I'm your host, Ed Clark, and the lovely Sherelle James is in the house again. Last week, or last time we were on, Sherelle forced me to have somebody from Elizabeth City State on. It turned out to be a good show. So this week, I asked her to find a guest that we could talk about small business, but also African American history and a whole lot of other things. And I think she did it again. I think she found the right person for us to talk to. Sherelle, tell us who's in with us this Sunday.
So we have Gayle Jennings, and by way of Los Angeles, California, now resident of North Carolina for a long time, former ABC employee to entrepreneur and business owner. And her business is King's Peppers. It's West African spices that she puts together. Her taco kit, we'll talk more about that, has won a Scovie Award, and she'll tell us what a Scovie Award is. It's a big thing. And she's gotten all kinds of recognitions all over the place. And she can be found in several different stores that are local to us. And so I want to just say welcome, Gayle, to the show.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Sherelle. Thank you, Ed. It's my pleasure to be here.
Well, Gayle, I love to eat, and I love to cook too. And when she was telling me about your website, and I went to the website, and I saw the spice mix you have, and I'm a popcorn fiend too. I can eat popcorn almost every day. And I saw this one recipe that you had where you use your seasonings to put on popcorn. We're going to talk about that later. Okay. But let's talk about you, Gayle Jennings. Sherelle mentioned that by way of LA. So that means you were in the den of I spent a lot of time in LA. I won't explain. I tried to be in the movie business, Gayle. It chewed me up, and I came back to North Carolina. I would take those meetings with people at film studios, and you do your pitch, and you get option offers or whatever, and nothing ever worked out like I wanted to. So I ran back to North Carolina as fast as I could.
But Gladys said, LA can be too much for the man.
Too much for the man. So tell us first about your experiences in LA, and then how do you come about selling spices?
It really is an interesting story, because on one hand, like you, growing up in the City of Angels and, the golden era of Hollywood and whatnot, it's kind of like the company town is entertainment, the town, the main employer in a way. And so I did work in television. I worked for ABC TV for many years. But it was during that time that I met and married a man from Nigeria. And he introduced me to these West African flavors, some of which, familiar, we ate black eyed peas, we ate a lot of rice, we ate things that were new to me. But it was when a friend of his gave him some of this spice blend, and I tried it, that I had this moment like, man, this is so delicious. I have got to make a product. I want to share this with the world. So some years went by, and actually I really got into the product. When we separated, we divorced, we remained friendly and are to this day. So I said, I still want to do something with this pepper. So here I am now. I have no experience in the food business. I'm communications and whatnot. But not, if you told me what it would take to do it, I probably would have said no thanks. But I actually went to Africa the first go around and sourced the ingredients for it. We had it blended there. We shipped it, had a co-packer. We did all that. And we were getting a lot of traction. Unfortunately, there was a lot I did not know about the food business. I wish I'd known Sherelle then. I'd probably be, a multimillionaire by now. But let me say this. Being in the food business really takes a lot of gumption. You really have to have a heart. You really have to know something about business. You have to know your numbers, and you have to have the passion. Mm-hmm. So let's say I had maybe like one and a half out of the three. But I went ahead. We brought the stuff back and put it out there. And fortunately, because the flavor was so delicious, I was able to gain some traction. I got into farmers markets in Hollywood and Long Beach and Silver Lake. But just as today, where I'd say the statistics show that over 40% of particularly Black women in business will fail. I'll say that what I didn't know and what I needed to know, I didn't know. The funding was difficult to get. Couldn't get a distributor to deliver the products, and I ended up closing the business. That really hurt me, but it's like I had to move on. So this was early 20s, say to about 2008 or 9. 2012, I ended up moving to North Carolina. Now, my daughter had moved here. Her husband is a corporate pilot, so he got work right out of flight school in Van Nuys. Moved here, got a job, been here ever since mid-90s. But when my daughter decided to go back to school and receive her master's in social work, then I came. I was listening to you, Ed, talk about your son, have 4 grandsons. One is only 4 years old. The rest are over 20 years old. And so I totally understand what you're saying and how you feel about seeing them out in the world. But it's for that same reason that I'm out here in the world doing King's Pepper, because I believe in it, because I feel it's a legacy that I can leave them. And it's a darn good product. King's Pepper is also, we have a mild, we have a original, and we have extra hot. And it's something unfortunately, I was able to start again. And by the time I did, there were a lot of resources here in North Carolina that I was able to take advantage of. And so I had to hunker down and really, been working on those numbers, and Terrell has been a big part of that. And I'm really happy to say that we're in a number of stores now. We've done the state fair. We've done the Got to BNC Festival. We've done some even special events with Meals on Wheels, and we're in the Black Farmers Market. And I've got so much love for the people here in Durham, Raleigh, and North Carolina, because they've been so supportive of King's Pepper. And, they really, really enjoy it, really like it.
So, Ms. Gayle, tell me this. Now, you've got North Carolina, and you've got the support, and you're getting some success and traction behind King's Peppers, but you've gotten some awards. So I know, tell us what a Scovie Award is and what got the Scovie Award.
I certainly will. I was, it's interesting that I was in 2020, my husband was diagnosed with lung cancer. And because that was, we're in COVID, and this is toward the end of the year, in the latter part of 2020, he was diagnosed with lung cancer. And so as we went into 2021, I thought, I don't know, it looked like I might have to shut this thing down again, because I would be risking his life. And I don't care how much I love King's Pepper, that was not something I was willing to do. And honestly, I was sitting thinking about what am I going to do when the phone rang and a woman says to me, "Is this King's Pepper?" I said, "Yes." She says, "The lady who makes the West African seasoning?" I said, "Yeah, it's me." She said, "Well, you just don't know. I'm so glad I found you. I want to get some pepper. I've been waiting." I said, "Well, okay. Are you in Raleigh, Chapel Hill? I could get some to you tomorrow." She says, "No, darling." She said, "I've been looking for you for nearly 20 years. I'm in Los Angeles."
Wow.
And she said, "I just found you on your website again." And I told her the story of how I had lost my domain name because I was a little late paying for the renewal. And so they tried to sell it back to me for like over $1,800. Another company wanted nearly $4,000. And I said, I'm not going to do it. So I tried with another name. It just didn't work. So when I finally got kingspepper.com back for only $14.99, I was so happy. And she said, periodically I would look for you. I would do a search on the internet. She said, I was so happy when you, answered the phone. She said, and don't you dare give up. You've got to keep going. This pepper is phenomenal. I've never had anything like it. And I bought this. She said, I still have the container. And she showed me the container. So I said to my husband, I said, Mel, we just have to be very careful, but I got to keep going. I got to do this again. And sure enough, later in that year, I entered an international fiery food competition that's put on by a magazine. And we won like second place in our category. So I was just really to get a Scovie Award so soon for our African taco kit. Now, the African taco kit uses black eyed peas to make these vegan patties that are delicious and crispy. You can make the patty and eat it for a snack, or you put it in your taco like I've been doing for years. And it's really awesome. You make a batter and fry it just like a pancake. And it makes a wonderful dish. And so unique that we won a Scovie Award for that particular product.
Look, I'm getting hungry. Listening to you, every time I hear successful people's stories, they talk about that low period, right? Where things seem like they're about to close, and
Right.
And you talk about health issues in the family, and so many people go through that. And the whole thing with COVID, I talked to a number of small business people. So one of the segments on our sister show, The Deal, when we first started, we started because of COVID, and we always had a small business person on there. And they were talking about the struggles of trying to stay in business during that. So I'm so glad that you shared that aspect of your story, because again, what I want to get across in this episode of Connections is that Black folks can make a way if we don't give up. We started out talking about Gail. This is Gail Jennings, by the way, who is the owner of King's Pepper. And I'm gonna make you stay over for the next segment. I'm not letting you go. So just be advised that you need to give me another 10 minutes, because I'm really inspired right now. But we started talking off, Sherelle, about something horrible and horrendous: the death of Tyre Nichols. You cannot put that in any other. It was, I don't care if he was killed by Black people, white people, whatever. We cannot keep killing each other, whoever we are. The country is completely violent sometimes, and you just don't want to be in the world sometimes. And then you hear somebody like Gail Jennings tell her story, and then you go, "Well, I can't give up." Gail's in King's Pepper, a woman looked for her for 20 years, Sherelle, to find her. So clearly, that's some good stuff.
Yeah.
So I say that to say, Gail, that I every time Sherelle introduces me to another person, it gives me a little more life in it, and I'm so glad that you decided to spend some time with us. So let me remind everybody, you're listening to Connections. This is Ed Clark and co-host Sherelle James. We got Gail Jennings in with us today from King's Pepper over in Durham. You know what we're going to do, Sherelle? Let's take another break.
Yes.
And when we come back, we're going to force Gail to give us some ways you can use her product to make some very delicious stuff. She already talked about those tacos. Now, I'm not a vegan. I'm from Bun Level, North Carolina. I love some meat, but I am willing to try her vegan taco mix. So we're going to talk about that and a whole bunch more after the break. So stay right there. We'll be right back after this message.
Be the difference at Elizabeth City State University and discover your strength, ignite your passion, and prepare to make a difference in the world. Nestled in northeastern North Carolina, ECSU is your home away from home, offering a quality and affordable education in a nurturing and supportive environment. Size does matter, and ECSU's small size means that students know their classmates, students receive one-on-one attention from their professors, And students know that the faculty and staff are committed to their academic success. Welcome to ECSU, where your success, safety, and comfort matter. At Elizabeth City State University, students come to discover their passion and leave to conquer their dreams. Whatever your passion is, you can be the difference at ECSU.
When the shuttle made it possible for scientists to be a part of the program as astronauts, then that was my break. And I will be involved in payload operations, performing some of the experiments. If there's any extravehicular activity going on, then I will be the one performing that. So it's a multiplicity of duties.
Let's chat with the people of NASA. People like Dr. Ronald McNair, a physics professor and one of NASA's newest astronauts. You are a PhD from MIT, aren't you?
That's right.
Isn't that that's kind of tough thing to get, isn't it?
I have to agree.
Why is it so tough?
Oh, it's a very broad field many times involving the abstract and things which aren't exactly intuitive. They violate our intuition and it violate the world as most people know it often. And you have to bring a lot of different disciplines together within physics. Your electromagnetism, your thermodynamics, a lot of things you must pull together. But it's very challenging.
Welcome back to our third and final segment of Connections. I'm your host, Ed Clark. Sherelle James is in the house, as usual. And then we have been so fortunate to have Gail Jennings in the house. She's the proprietor of King's Pepper. That's online where you can order stuff from her. But Sherelle's going to tell us where else we can get this fine product from. We've been talking about a number of things. Of course, we started talking about Tyree Nichols. Then we talked about the vice president being in Raleigh-Durham area on Wednesday to talk about small business. And we're kicking off Black History Month with somebody who has a connection to Africa. She went and got her product from Africa, sourced her product from there. So that's always a good thing because we want to talk about our connection back to the motherland, especially during Black History Month. So Sherelle, I know you got a really good sense of this, how small businesses work and whether or not they can thrive in this economic climate or whatever. But the only way they work is if they sell stuff and make money. So I know you're going to find out where we can buy the product and how to get a hold of it, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Let me just tell you, I went to her website. So she talked about that domain, kingspepper.com, KINGSPEPPER.com. And the first thing it says is King's Pepper is rich, aromatic blend of exotic herbs and fiery spices that's based on a centuries-old West African recipe. If that don't get you thinking and trying to figure out where can we find these things, Miss Gail Jennings, where are you currently selling your King's Pepper?
We are in all 4 of the Weaver Street markets. So that would be Raleigh, Carborough, Hillsborough, and Chapel Hill. You can find us at the Butcher's Market on Falls of Neuse Road. We're at the Durham Co-op. And I'll say my home base is on Cessie's on Foster Street. On Saturday mornings, you find me there handing out samples. I sprinkle King's Pepper on Cheetos when I do samples. Okay, so let me explain this. We don't put salt, peanut, or MSG in our products like they do in some versions of it. And so I came up on the idea to sprinkle it just on a simple little Cheeto. And I tell you, when I hand one to people and they take a bite and I see the shoulders move and they start to smell it, God, this is good. They're surprised. And then it's like, oh man, I can just see this. I'm gonna rub this into, my brisket. I'm gonna put it on my eggs in the morning, chicken, fish, potatoes, veggies, across the board. You find something that you'll enjoy King's Pepper on. It really is that versatile. And it is a centuries old West African recipe that, like I said, when I tasted it, I just had to, run and tell the kids about it. So that's where we are here today.
Well, Gail, the other thing I think about when I listen to you, I love to cook. People who know me, and I'll try all kind of recipes. I'll go through phases where I'll cook, West African dishes. So I'll make me some red or
Okay.
or fufu or whatever. I go through these spells of wanting to taste these different flavors. And one of the things that we don't have a lot of is African restaurants. We don't think about when we go out to eat that I want to taste African food, because some of it is maybe because it's imbued inside of us that we don't even know that's what we're doing, right? That
Right.
we're actually, our heritage and our food ways are built inside of us. So here's the question, Gail. What do you all? Because when you start a business, I think all business people do. They also want to teach people something. What are you trying to tell people about the food ways of African people and African American people when you started your business? Because I know you didn't start it just to sell some spices. You
I did
started it
start-
for a reason.
That's right, to educate myself and others on the delicious food that are coming out of West Africa. And it's really one of the reasons that I got onto the pages of the New York Times, because I read an article that Melissa Clark had in her column about the growth and popularity in West African flavors and restaurants. And some of the readers commented that, oh, I would love to try that recipe. I wish there was a restaurant near me. So I sent her an email. I said, for your readers who aren't near one of those places, there are packaged good producers like myself who make these wonderful seasonings and blends and sauces. So your readers would be able to make their own products. So she contacted me. She wrote back. She says, well, I'm just about to do something for Thanksgiving, ways to use leftover Thanksgiving turkey. Do you have something that would, along that lines? And I told, oh, I sure do. I make Gumbo's Daddy. And I call it
Gumbo's Daddy.
Gumbo's Daddy, because gumbo, as we know it, some people want to attribute to New Orleans, Louisiana, or the Creole or whatever, but it's actually based on a West African dish, right? So when I told her that, she was like, wow, that would be great. So she bought the pepper, sent it to her to New York. She tried the recipe. They loved it. And so the day before Thanksgiving last year, there we were in the paper. I mean, my hands were shaking. I was so excited. And then orders came pouring in from all across the country. It was just really phenomenal. It was just a great thing to experience. And I still say that, we attribute, Southern, soulful Southern to rice or the black eyed peas or the watermelon, or those things that come out of West Africa. They've kind of fallen the umbrella of Southern now, but they're African in origin. And we can take pride in the fact that we've been feeding a whole lot of folks for a whole lot of years.
Mm-hmm.
That was one of the reasons too that I did a commercial on air to me at Black Lumber with a Black product from West African, rooted in West Africa. That was important to me too.
Yeah, so I want to remind you, you're listening to Connections. I'm Ed Clark. That's Gail Jennings that you were just listening to. She's the proprietor of King's Pepper out of Durham. And, I held her over in the segment, Sherelle, because like I said, she got me thinking not only about, small business, about some of the trials and tribulations of trying to keep those small businesses going and operating, but also you're having good product, right? And so one of the things that I would encourage folks to do is, if you're going to be in business, always deliver the best you can, right? Product wise, that's how you're successful. There's no shortcut to this. But Gail, you mentioned at the beginning about how many businesses fail,
Yes.
right? And so that has to always be sort of in the back of your mind when you're a small business owner. And I told you that, during COVID or whatever on the other program that we had, I would bring on entrepreneurs. And one of the first guests I had is a lady named Pretty Waz, who runs a restaurant called Chini here in Raleigh. And she was struggling because she didn't know if she could make it. And she was nominated for a James Beard Award last week. And she's been a guest here on Connections as well. And it's about that perseverance and hanging on and that kind of thing. I don't want to run out of time. So I want to make sure that we know, again, how to get your stuff, how to get in touch with you. Also remind folks that this chick ends up in the New York Times, whatever. So we have good people on here. Barack Obama's been a guest here. Now Gail Jennings has been a guest on here. So Gail, remind us how to get in touch with you, where your stuff is, and anything else you want to share about this journey that you're on with King's Pepper.
We're online at kingspepper.com. We're in all 4 Weaver Street markets and the Butcher's Market. We do, if you're in Durham on Saturday mornings, I'm usually right there in Ceci's Boutique. We also do we do a lot of events at the State Farmers Market out on Wheeler, Lake Wheeler Road in Raleigh. And we're part of the Black Farmers Market. So please come out and support this year. And, if you see me out and about, just come over and have a Cheeto. Let's talk about it.
Have a Cheeto. Well, you know what? I'll take you up on having a Cheeto. As a matter of fact, like I said, you got me hungry. I want to make sure that I pick up some of your product. I encourage everybody else to do that too. Not because this is a crass commercial appeal. That again, throughout the month, especially Black History Month, we want to feature some people, but throughout the year, people who are trying really hard to do the right thing, and that's Gail Jennings. So thank you so much for being in with us this Sunday.
Appreciate it so much.
Yeah.
I just want to say one more thing. The food business has really given so many of us a leg up in life. I know everybody can think of an uncle or aunt had the barbecue stand or made pies and cakes. I know my grandmother did. And so, we just have to keep going. And I'm looking forward to meeting some of the listeners out in the area. And I thank you so much for having me on today.
Yeah, and you will. And we thank you. So, Sherelle, we got about 4 or 5 minutes left here. I do want to talk about some other things. But again, I can't, I want to put everything into context. Like I said, we started off with as bad as you can get. Yeah. We end with as good as you can get, right? But there's a lot of in between. We talked a little bit about the last time we were on. We're still in this situation where Congress hasn't figured things out yet. There's not going to be any meaningful legislation, I don't believe, in this Congress. I think this is probably a wash, right? And we know that the debt ceiling has not been settled. McCarthy went to meet with President Biden, and there's been a lot of showboating going on from the Republicans because they never had a problem with raising the debt ceiling when Donald Trump was in office. And then on our first show, we had Katie Lawson on of the year to talk about taxes. Mm-hmm. And I know people are getting their taxes, W-2s in the mail, and they're raring to go to try to get their refund or whatever. You're in that business too. So let's wrap everything up here. Mm-hmm. You got your W-2 form. What do you tell people they need to do before they run off to some tax prep place or whatever? How do you get your mind ready for tax season, and what are you telling folks who you can, and how can you advise them?
Well, I think that one of the things is, because, I am all about strategy and planning. And so some of the things you're doing throughout the year to get ready for your tax season for the next year. And then of course, you're waiting on documents so it just depends. If you're a business owner, then January 31st was the day to have the W-2s and 1099s out in the mail to, your contractors and your employers, and making sure that was happening. But that comes back to having good accounting, right? Being able to have accounting throughout the year. That's that planning that I'm talking about. So that, and having a good accounting system or accountant, it doesn't matter which one, to be able to quickly be able to get those forms together. So you're not trying at the last minute to get documents you need from your employees or your contractors because you didn't get what you needed in the beginning. So that's where that planning comes in. Now, if you're on the other side of that, where you're receiving, I tell people be patient. Because everyone had to the 31st. So that means that now everything's in the mail. And mostly people send out things around the 15th or 20th, but some people wait to that last day. And so just be patient and gather all of your information. Think about any changes that happened the last year, whether it's you had a child or you changed residence or you sold residence or whatever it may be. And making sure that you've talked to your financial planners and your accountant ahead of time, because the accountant can give you a checklist, your tax preparer, but making sure that you're just patient and you're gathering all of that information. It doesn't have to be perfect, but you do need all of that information, and making sure that you understand what changes have happened in the last year and communicating those to the person who's going to prepare your taxes. And then being patient to know that it's a herd, right? We only have a certain amount of months to get things done. And so you want to get it done. You want to get done as soon as possible and not as late as possible. And so that way you can get in on time. So I just ask for everybody to have patience around this time and just be as prepared as you can or being organized. But that's a yearly thing. That's all year. That's not just at tax time. If you're organized all year, it makes it easy at tax time to move forward.
Well, I want to start giving you all my stuff because I'm sure I'm not organized like I need to be. Hey, folks, look, it's Sunday, February the 5th. We've had a good conversation here with Gail Jennings from King's Pepper. We've talked about some really hard, heavy issues. Sherelle's getting you prepared for tax time. Connections is a community show. And so we got people from the community like Katie Lawson on our first show. Gail Jennings in here today. We had the coach from Elizabeth City State last week. If you want to be on the show, you got a show idea, whatever, please let us know. You can send an email to ed@thedealwithedclark.com. You can always go out to our website, thedealwithedclark.com, and let us know your show ideas or whatever. You can always tell the folks at the radio station at Foxy 107, 104. Make sure you make this program about us, the folks in the Triangle and in Eastern North Carolina, so that we're talking to them. I know Sherelle's been working really hard on getting our congressional delegation in here. So expect Don Davis and Valerie Fouché and Wiley Nichols and people like that to be stopping by in the next few weeks. Expect people like Roger Floyd, George Floyd's uncle, to be in here. Reach out to him. And just a whole plethora of folks. So Connections is a community show. In the meantime, I need for you to set your clock for next Sunday. Larry Hall will be in for Talkback, and then we'll be back in 2 weeks. So what do we always tell you to do? Go out and do something good for somebody today. That's all I ask you to do. And we'll see you next time. You've been listening to Connections. Bye.